Okay, well, let us start. In January or February of 1887, Latu returned from Vrindavan to Calcutta. A daughter of Ramchandra Datta had suddenly died from burns suffered in a fire. And when this news reached Holy Mother, she sent Latu to visit Ramchandra and his wife. When Latu reached Calcutta, he went straight to Ramchandra's house. After staying there for 3 or 4 days, he went to the Bharanagore monastery. During that time that Latu had been in Vrindavan, many of the other young disciples had formally taken sannyasa, the final monastic vows. They'd taken them together. Therefore, Naran told Latu that he too should take sannyasa, and Latu agreed at once. Before the ceremony at which the vows are actually taken, there's a shraddha, or funeral ceremony, performed for oneself and for one's forefathers, thus severing all ties with the world and ensuring liberation for one's family before becoming a monk, or a nun, I should add. So there. Latu's behavior during the Shraddha ceremony was unusual. Instead of saying the Sanskrit mantras that are customary for the ceremony, he simply evoked his departed family members in his own way and offered the appropriate articles to them, saying, "Father dear, do come here, take your seat, accept my worship, take this food and drink," and so on. Latu's whole life was something extraordinary. Oh, I see a kitty, along with Leanne. Cats always do that, don't they? Latu's whole life was something extraordinary. His single-minded approach to God was wonderful in every way, and he was very special, even unique, among the disciples of Sri Ramakrishna. Therefore, Naran gave him the monastic name Adbhutananda, meaning he who finds bliss in the wonderful nature of the Atman. Therefore, we should call him Latu Maharaj instead of Latu, Maharaj being a respectful term commonly used in addressing a monk. One day, a man of the Chapra district, who may have been Latu Maharaj's uncle, who had brought him to Calcutta, came and asked him to visit his native village just once. He gave a characteristically blunt reply. "You do what you want, I know my path." Okay. After Latu Maharaj had formally become a sannyasin, he stayed at the Bharanagore Mutt for 1.5 years. In later years, he would tell many stories about the early days of the monastery. He said, Shashi's performance, that's Swami Ramakrishna, Shashi's performance of the Vespers service was something worth seeing. Everybody could feel the master's presence palpably. Brother Kali, that is Swami Abhutananda, composed the mantras for the master's worship. And since then, the worship is conducted with these mantras. In those days, we loved each other so dearly that if perchance somebody got angry with someone else, that anger did not last very long. Very often, our topic of conversation would be the master's transcendent love. If one person said he used to love me the most, another would at once contradict him and say, no, he loved me the most. One day during such a discussion, I told them, the master did not leave any property behind, and still your squabbling seems unending. The Lord alone knows whether you have gone to court the Lord alone knows if you had gone to court if he'd left us any property. There was an outburst of laughter at my remark. I noticed, he says, that everyone at the Mutt was studying hard. One day I asked Brother Sharat, that's Swami Sardananda, why do you read so many books? All of you are finished with school, yet you study so hard. Are you going to appear for an examination? Brother Sharat replied, Brother, without serious study, how are we to understand the subtle matters of religion? I rejoined, he said, that the master had talked so much about these subtle matters, and I'd never seen him reading books. Sharat said, his case is completely different. He himself said the Divine Mother provided him with heaps of knowledge. Have we reached that stage, or can we ever hope to reach it? We have to read in order to acquire such knowledge. I did not leave the matter there, but I replied, the master said that we get one conception of the truth through studying books and quite another through spiritual experience. Then Sharat said, but didn't he say that those who would be teachers will also have to study the scriptures as well? Then I realized, he said, that men understand differently according to their mental constitutions. and that the master taught each one according to his own nature. So from then on, I kept quiet. Brother Kali, that's Swami Abhutananda, was often busy studying the scriptures and other books. During rare leisure moments, he would debate with Brother Lauren, that's Swami Vivekananda. Lauren used to silence him very easily, but one day Kali cornered Lauren in an argument so that Lauren could not give a reply. Then Lauren said, "Let us stop here today. Tomorrow we shall start again from the same point." Brother Kali was very happy for the time being, but the next day Lauren began giving new arguments that refuted Kali's points, and Kali had to admit he was beaten. He said, "I couldn't defeat Lauren for a single day," he said regretfully. But I told him, "Brother, it is bound to be so. Brother Lauren is our leader. How can you surpass him?" Once the idea came to me that I must be as great as Brother Vivekananda. Little did I understand then how far ahead of me he was in spiritual progress. I started up and doing, but what did I find? The more I tried, the farther ahead he appeared to be. Once it seemed that I had almost caught up with him, but then I saw him pushing ahead at full speed. Of what use was my meager efforts? The Lord's grace was certainly upon him. I couldn't possibly increase my endeavors, as I was already putting out my greatest effort. Moreover, Brother Vivekananda was not going to hold back for me. How could it ever be possible for me to equal him? Another time, there was a heated exchange of words between the brother disciples in connection with the shrine. It began when a householder devotee said, "You fellows do nothing but act like priests in this photograph. You fellows do nothing but act as priests to the photograph of the master, burning incense and waving lights before it, just as Orthodox priests do before the stone image of Shitala." That's the goddess. This remark upset Brother Shashi very much, and he said sharply, "The money of such a householder should not be touched with a barge pole. It is cursed." Brother Lauren used to be amused when he saw Brother Shashi angry. He told him, "All right, then go and beg your food for your master." Brother Shashi replied, that is, beg food so he could offer some food to Sri Ramakrishna during the worship. Brother Shashi responded, "Very well. I will not touch a bit of your money either. I will beg in order to feed my master." Still smiling, Lauren said, "And I suppose you will offer him luchis and expensive fried bread that you get by begging?" Undaunted, Shashi replied, "Yes, I will offer him luchis, and moreover, I will serve those offered luchis to you to gulp down afterwards." Then Lauren pretended to get angry. "No, by no means will I allow luchis to be offered to him while we have nothing to eat. Such a master should be thrown out. If you won't do it, I'm going to throw him out myself." Saying this, he sprang up and started toward the shrine. Shashi said something in English and ran after him. I would love to have seen that. When I saw what was happening, I tried to intercede. I told Lauren, "Brother, why are you opposed to Shashi's desire to serve the master luchis? Let him go his own way and you yours." Lauren replied, "Keep quiet, you fool." A harsh retort was about to come out of my mouth when Lauren laughed such a laugh that Shashi too began to laugh. A few minutes later, we were all sitting there and making arrangements for the master's worship. One day, Brother Shashi asked the old Swami, that Swami Chetanananda, to put a fresh twig stripped of leaves and bark in the shrine early in the morning to be offered to the master to be used as a toothbrush. That's what they do in India. They kind of get, I think it's a piece of a neem twig, and they clean their teeth with that. They kind of get the sides and get like that. The old Swami did not know that for one end of the twig to be gently beaten, the old Swami did not know that one end of the twig was to be gently beaten to soften the fibers to make them brush-like. He brought a whole twig, unbeaten, as most people would use, but Sri Ramakrishna was so delicate. They said his flesh and skin was like butter, so anything any sort of touch could actually cause real harm. It would bleed. He said, during the breakfast offering, Shashi saw this, and he rushed up to the old Swami and scolded him bitterly. "You rogue! You have caused the master's gum to bleed today. I will teach you a good lesson." I cried out to the old Swami, "Don't just stand there looking at him, run away." So he fled, and the situation calmed down immediately. Shashi got another twig, properly beaten to soften the fibers, and threw away the first one. Just see the extent of Brother Shashi's attitude of service to the Master. Recalling the days at the Brahma Mat, Swami Ramakrishna spoke of the intensity of Latu Maharaj's meditation. He said, "We often had to call Latu back to normal consciousness and virtually force him to take food. There were many days when we called him again and again, but with no response. So we would place food in his room and leave. The rest of the day would pass. When we meant to call him for supper, we would find the noon meal still there where it had been placed, untouched, stale, and Latu lying down in the same straight posture as before, completely covered with a thick cotton chudder. We had to resort to many tricks just to force a little food down his throat." Swami Sardananda once told Mahendranath Datta, that is Swami Vivekananda's brother, "You know, at time that fellow Leto doesn't sleep at all. During the first part of the night he pretends to be asleep and even snores, but he keeps his rosary with him, and when the others are asleep, he sits up and starts counting his beads. One night I heard the ticking of beads, and I thought a mouse might have come into the room. When I gave a rap, the sound stopped. A little later, the ticks began again. This went on for a while, and I began to suspect that it might not be a mouse. The next night, I stayed awake and was very watchful. The moment I heard the first tick, I struck a match and found Leto up, counting his beads. Then I left. Ah, you mean to surpass us all. While we are sleeping, you are counting your beads." From the following stories told by Swami Chetanananda, it is clear that he had a great regard for Latu Maharaj. Many of the brother monks were leaving the monastery at Baranagar to practice tapasya. I too felt an urge to meet holy men in other parts of India. As I was thinking this over, a voice came from within me. "Where will you find such a sadhu as he?" Startled, I turned my gaze and saw Latu Maharaj lying down, covered with a thick cloth, deep in meditation. Immediately the thought came, where indeed will I find a sadhu like him? That very moment, Latu Maharaj spoke out, "Where will you go? It's better to engage yourself in tapasya here." That time I stayed at the monastery, Swami Chetanananda said. Another day, in the course of conversation on spiritual things, I remarked, "The Lord is free from faults, such as partiality, cruelty, and the like." Latu Maharaj did not say anything then, but after the gentleman to whom I was talking had gone, he said, "What a statement you made. You mean to say that the Lord is like a little child and you, like a mother, have to go to his defense?" I tried to vindicate myself and said, "If he did whatever came to his mind, he would be a capricious despot. Is he like the Tsar of Russia? He is kind of benevolent." Latu Maharaj blinked and said, "It is very good of you to save your Lord from criticism. But won't you admit that even the despotic czars are guided by him?" What a wonderful light he threw on the issue. His words remained with me as if they'd been chiseled permanently in stone. And now we move to the next chapter, which is called Days of Austerity. Sounds like pretty austere before, actually. Okay, Sri Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 22, "If a man worships me and meditates upon me with an undistracted mind, devoting every moment to me, I shall supply all his needs." An absolute reliance on Sri Ramakrishna was the keystone of Latu Maharaj's character. So long as the master was physically present, Latu Maharaj followed his wishes implicitly. How he felt the master's guidance after his passing away is beyond our understanding. He himself once said, "How could an ignoramus like myself undertake such severe austerities during that period of my life after Sri Ramakrishna passed away? What do I know of austerities? It is he who is taking me by the hand through all these disciplines." From the time of Sri Ramakrishna's death in 1886 until 1912, when he moved permanently to Varanasi, Latu Maharaj lived almost entirely in the Calcutta area, not far from the places where the master had stayed and often visited. Yet, even in that city, he lived the life of a wandering monk, unattached to people or places. Until 1903, when he took up residence at Balaram Bose's house, there was no one there was no one place that he called home. Sometimes he stayed at the homes of various household or devotees of the master, but most often he could be found living simply on the bank of the Ganga. He would often get food or a few coins or minimal necessities from different devotees, and they in turn felt blessed to serve this holy man. Sometimes he would stay at the monastery for a period of time. Once a devotee came to Latu Maharaj and asked him not to beg alms anymore, but to allow the householder devotees to supply his needs. At first, Latu Maharaj objected, saying that it was part of the monk's way of life to beg his food. But when he found out that his brother disciple Swami Brahma-jnani had encouraged the devotee to ask this of him, he relented. From then on, he would accept service from the devotees, but never anything more than was absolutely needed. Once Girish Ghosh remarked to a devotee, "If you want to see a monk such as the Gita describes, go and see Latu." The devotee did not know what Girish meant. Girish said, "I see you have not read the second chapter of the Gita. The nature of a man of steady wisdom is described there. You can see all those qualities exemplified in Latu's character." This famous part of the Bhagavad Gita, the last portion of the second chapter, speaks of the illumined soul. Not shaken by adversity, not hankering after happiness, free from fear, free from anger, free from the things of desire, I call him a seer and illumined. The bonds of his flesh are broken. He is lucky, and he does not rejoice. He is unlucky, and he does not weep. I call him illumined. Navagopal Ghosh, a householder disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, also found these same qualities in Latu Maharaj. He said, "At one time, Latu Maharaj used to come to our house. Anyone could see that all of his dealings with the world were over. He had no personal desires, nor any obligation to anyone. He didn't relish food when it came to him, nor did he feel any want or suffering when it did not. A glance at him would convince anyone of his absolute desirelessness." The following story was recorded by Swami Chetanananda. A devotee who was an eyewitness said, Latu Maharaj used to tie some dry gram in the corner of his towel and leave it to soak in the Ganga. He would eat it after it softened. One day, as usual, he put the gram to soak with a brick on the top to hold it in place. It was ebb tide then. He sat to meditate and became absorbed and did not notice that the tide had changed. When he came to normal consciousness, he found the river at full tide. His gram! There was no way of knowing whether his cloth had been swept away. He sat still. What could he do? When the tide had gone down again, he found his piece of cloth with the gram exactly where he placed it. He picked it up and started eating. In later years, Latu Maharaj would speak of these days in Calcutta. He said, "I used to stay on the bank of the Ganga and live on puris, a fried bread, and potato curry or fried gram. One day during that time, Shantiram Babu, that's Balaram Bose's brother-in-law, urged me to stay with his family. I told him politely, 'You know, Shanti Babu, I have no fixed hours for bathing, eating, and so on. Why should you trouble yourself unnecessarily because of me? I'm quite happy with my puris and my curry from the market.' Do you know what he said? 'Ours is such a big family, and we have so many expenses, that even a pound of rice and a pound of wheat were wasted. Would it be noticed? And you don't need to worry. They will bring you your meals to your room at night, and you can eat at your own convenience. There will be no trouble for you or for us.' I did not have a heart to say no to him," he said. One day, I was sitting rather absent-mindedly on a boat loaded with straw at Bog Bazaar. The crew did not notice me. I was not aware of when the boat weighed anchor. I realized what was happening after the boat had gone up the river for some distance past Dakshineswar. I asked the boatman to help me, and they let me off the boat. On the way back to Calcutta, I stopped at the Dakshineswar temple garden, and Ramlal Dadu fed me sumptuously. Latu Maharaj also told a devotee of a similar incident that happened about this time. I used to spend the day at the bathing ghat. It's a place with steps right by the river, so you kind of walk down using these steps. And it says it provides access to the river. Near a Shiva temple, and the night of the terrace, and what does this say? I used to spend the day at a bathing ghat, near a Shiva temple, and the night on the terrace of the Chandni at Bagbazar. These were my places for meditation and japa. The devotee asked, "What did you do when it rained, Maharaj?" Latu Maharaj replied, "Well, near the ghat there used to be many empty railway cars. I would get into one. When the rain stopped, I would get out again. Once I got into a car and did not notice what had hooked up to the engine and pulled away. The next day, several porters came and asked me to leave the car. I asked them where I was, and they told me I was at Chitpur. What could be done? I had to walk back to Bagbazar Ghat. From then on, I stopped taking shelter in railway cars. When it rained, I would leave the terrace and take shelter at the corner of the Chandni. The police of the Chandni knew me and would not trouble me." Latu Maharaj recalled, "When Brother Vivekananda left the monastery on a second trip to the West in 1899, I did not feel like staying there. I left too when I went to Upan Babu's printing office. He was a householder disciple of the Ramakrishna. He invited me to stay there as long as I liked. A devotee asked, 'Why, of all places, Maharaj, did you choose to stay at a printing press office?' Latu Maharaj said, 'What is wrong with that? It was very comfortable at night. I used to spread my blanket on the big wooden boxes which held the paper and lie down in comfort.' Devotee, 'But it must have been noisy, Maharaj.' Latu Maharaj, 'Yes, that is true, but it didn't disturb my meditation. A few employees respected me and served me well, and Upan Babu loved me dearly, so I stayed there.' Devotee, 'It is because you used to associate with printers and respectable people. It is because you used to associate with printers that respectable people did not come to you. I've heard that they were all ruffians.' Printers. Latu Maharaj, 'Yes, I associated with them, but why should people think they are ruffians?' Devotee, 'Many of them were of bad character and were addicted to drinking and gambling. Isn't that true? Why should you keep the company of people like that?' Latu Maharaj, 'But they were not hypocrites.' Phew. Someone who was present during this conversation later wrote in his diary, Latu Maharaj divided men into two categories, those who were free from any pretense and those who were hypocritical. He showed love and sympathy for the pure and unostentatious man, but he would keep learned hypocrites at a distance. Very late one night he was staying at the Basumati press, and Latu Maharaj was heard shouting at the top of his voice, 'Shut up, you devil! You dare threaten me, a child of Ramakrishna? Your tricks and your threats are useless, be sure of that.' Hearing him roaring like this, the workers in the adjacent room ran to where he was and found him seated in heroic posture, a posture used in worship, portraying the idea of bravery and resolution. His eyes were fixed and blazing with vehemence. Finding him in such a terrifying mood, they did not know what to do or say. At last one man mustered up the sufficient courage to ask, 'Maharaj, whom are you shouting to at the dead of night? We don't see anyone here.' Latu Maharaj did not reply. Latu Maharaj once told a devotee, 'Don't think that once a spiritual aspirant has experienced samadhi, he can have it thereafter any number of times or whenever he wants it. There are many aspirants who've tasted it but once. There are many more who cannot reach it even once in a whole lifetime. The Master has given me endless grace. After making me struggle for only 8 years, he graciously lifted me up to that state again. One day I was seated on the bank of the Ganga when I saw light coming out of the waters of the river. It grew in size until at last it filled the sky, the earth, and the space between them. Inside that infinite effulgence, there were numberless other lights. Looking at this, I lost myself completely. I do not know what happened next. However, when I returned from that wonderful realm, I remained in the state of ecstatic joy. What bliss! It cannot be expressed in words. The heaviness of my heart had disappeared completely. I felt that the whole world was saturated with bliss and bliss alone. During these years, when he lived in Calcutta, Latu Maharaj made several pilgrimages to other parts of India. In 1895, he traveled south of Bengal to Puri, city of the great temple of Lord Jagannath. In 1897, he was among the party that went with Swami Vivekananda to Kashmir and through northwestern India. Then, in 1903, he made a trip to Varanasi, Allahabad, and again Vrindavan. In 1903, that would be after Swami Vivekananda's death. And many of the disciples were so shattered by that, a lot of them just went off on pilgrimage trying to sort of get their heads and minds together and their hearts. And then in 1903, he made a trip to Varanasi, Allahabad, and again Vrindavan. In 1903, he also made a second pilgrimage to Puri. In later years, he spoke of the time he spent in Puri. He said, "The Lord Jagannath in Puri is a living presence in the form of a simple wooden image. He appears to each person according to his particular spiritual mood and level of attainment. I prayed to him, 'Lord, please show me that beautiful form of yours that you showed to Chaitanya and made him shed profuse tears in ecstasy. What do I know of you? Please bestow your grace on me.' Surrendering this way, I stayed there and waited. Then one day he answered my prayer. When I went to take leave of Lord Jagannath, I asked for two blessings. First, that I would not have to wander here and there, but could settle in one place and plunge into meditation on the Lord. And second, that whatever I ate, I would be able to digest." A devotee asked the reason for the second request, and Latu Maharaj answered, "Don't you understand? A sadhu lives on alms, and thus he must maintain his body on all kinds of food at irregular hours. If his digestion is not good, his health will break down, and then his spiritual practices will suffer a setback. That is why I asked for such a boon." At another time, he spoke of the greatness of the Jagannath temple. He said, "Where else will you find such a place of pilgrimage? All are equal there. There are no distinctions of caste, class, or sect. Is this a small thing? And there are lots of conveniences. With a few pies, you can get cooked food for yourself and all your guests and friends. You will not have to bother with a cook or with cooking. If you pay a little more, they will send the prasad right to the place where you are staying. You are left completely free to devote yourself to spiritual practices. Moreover, the temple is so big that you can have quiet corner for yourself any time inside it. No one will care or dare to disturb you. If you want a quieter place, you can go to the beach nearby. Many holy men are quietly practicing sadhana there. Shankara, Ramanuja, and Chaitanya practice sadhana in Puri. It is a very holy place." And that is the end of that chapter. So, are there any questions or discussions on this? Well, in Puri, there might not be, in the Jagannath temple, no class, no caste, no distinctions, but they don't let Westerners in. They used to, until probably somewhere in the late 40s. And apparently because the first group of the nuns, and I think Swami Krishnananda was there, they were able to get into the temple. But then afterward, a group of Westerners came and they behaved very badly. And so after that, and that was like the only second group of Westerners they got. So after that, it was over. No more.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a great pity. Hopefully they will change it one of these days, but probably not in my lifetime, or at least not in my ability to go on a pilgrimage time. Maybe it'll be in Ava's time, Leanne. What do you think? Let's hope for that. Or in Elizabeth's time. She's young. We can see that.
Yeah.
All right. Any discussion? Any other questions? Saturday there'll be. Was that a hand or just a yawn?
Just me.
A scratch. A cat. This Saturday, the reading of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna here at 5 p.m. On the 2nd, Swami Vivekananda was speaking on the psychic and the spiritual. That's such a great topic because people often conflate it. And on Wednesday, we will have another reading of How a Shepherd Boy Became a Saint. Thank you all for joining. This is such a lovely book. It's really gorgeous.
Thank you, Prajapana.
Oh, so nice to see you all. Leanne, how are you doing there in Texas?
Texas, but it's good. It's fine. All's
Okay.
good. But
All
I
good.
do love this book. I mean, it's just, it reads as a story. I picture everything as you read it, and it's just lovely. I feel like I know Latu.
Yeah, wow, what an amazing life.
Yeah.
But Swami Chetanananda writes so well. So
Yeah.
well. It's really a blessing to have his books available. We're really lucky that he spent so much of his life doing just this. The vast majority of his 76 years, 86 years? 86 years has been doing this. Just exactly reading, translating, writing, just making this available for everybody. It's a huge blessing for us all, and it will last for forever. Or how long ever will be before we'll immolate. Anyway.
Pretty soon.
Trying to be realistic here. Don't want to get too literary. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. See y'all later. Stay warm.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.